We farm corn, soybeans, and wheat here. I have a small beef cow herd that we use just on some ground that's a little bit marginal, so not big extensive, but something to dabble in. When I rode a school bus, there were still 6-8 dairies around here as a youth, and I watched the lights go out in those dairy barns while I was on the school bus. The school bus used to come out of town. It stopped at every house on these roads and picked up 4 or 5 kids. Well, now the school bus goes by here 60 miles an hour because it's probably 4 or 5 miles between a stop. But in the 80s, it was very tough climate, very depressed times. People were, saddened by what was going on in the country, and a lot of parents just said, go find a job somewhere. There's no future here on the farm. And I think that accelerated where we are today.
What has happened, there's become a disconnect from people from the land, even folks coming off of a rural farm, because the culture has changed. Because for so many years, American farm was the culture, and so we grew up, it was in our blood, the farming culture.
I think we've lost our town to rural approach, even out here in the country, because there's no stores in town. It used to be the hardware store. It used to be a big bank in town that did ag lending. And so all these businesses, a lumber yard, a hardware store, a drug store, and as a rural community, we went to town and purchased our goods and said, well, that's all gone. So now you go 30 miles this way or 30 miles that way, and they don't know who you are.
They feel like it's not really a town without some of these things. You'll find a lot of small towns with bars and churches. It's an odd combination. But you get rid of consolidated schools was a big issue. When we lose that, people feel like, well, we're not really a town. And it's the same thing with their grocery stores.
When I got out of college, hard to find a job. I didn't have a plan. A guy I was working for through high school, and that time his wife had been sick. She got diagnosed with brain cancer, and so they had to go to Mayo's for quite a while. And he said, "Well, could you just do the farming for me?" And that ended up being all year because they were back and forth to Mayo's a lot. And I went from in college and farming 14 or 15 acres at the time to taking care of a 1,000-acre farm, and he had 700 head of cattle on it and a bunch of hogs. And so I became a full-time farmer overnight, but learned a lot. His brother was there to help and some of his other family members, but she passed away young. It was a sad time, but it kind of launched me into even liking farming even more. But they came back and they'd help us hay, and they helped us shell corn. We'd get the cobs from somebody. But nobody had all the machinery you needed back then. So you traded labor. We had a neighbor that had a good hay baler, so he would come bale our hay. My dad had a good mower. He would go cut the hay. And I think some of that's coming back.
Basically, we were living in Washington Heights when we first got married. We had a house out south part of Chicago. In Amelia family house here in Fuller Park, where she grew up, she still owned, and we had renters. We just noticed that things, every time we would come, something would be less appealing. And so in 92, I believe it was, we moved back to Fuller Park and tried to affect some positive change in the community. There was a Tribune paper report on the newspaper and on the television in regards to the high levels of lead in Chicago. Community with the highest reported lead levels ended up being Fuller Park. Lead inhibits your ability to learn. And so we found out there was a direct correlation between our school's test scores and the amount of lead in the children's blood. Lead does affect the violence in a community. The more lead that's prevalent in the blood of the children and youth of a community, the higher the level of violence. There is a direct correlation of the two. And food was also on the table in terms of we don't have a grocery store. Even still, we don't have a grocery store.
Grocery stores are what we call an anchor institution. That'd be your churches, your schools. You may not think of the grocery store as that, but it's a social setting. Your neighbor's kid works there. You see people, you talk about the football game that's coming up or what this teacher said to so-and-so and how that works. So it's a place where you talk to your neighbor. So you have your first space, which is your home, your second space is your work, and your third space is where you meet people in your community. And that's where you have a bridging effect for that social capital. So you get out there and it creates an identity for the community. Representative Mary Beth Canty from Arlington Heights area up there, the state recently passed the Illinois Grocery Initiative, and she was very instrumental in that. And one of the things that she always says is, we're wanting for them to stop violence in those areas, but if you can't even find food, you got to cover the basic needs first. And so she sees the Illinois Grocery Initiative as a way to stabilize those communities as well. Sometimes there's a poverty mentality there too. And by that I mean they've done without for so long persistent poverty. We have several persistent poverty counties by federal definition at the southern tip of Illinois. Now a lot of folks know that, but what that means is generational poverty. So your mindset changes. It's more subsistence. It's like, I'm going to get what I can right now, not holding out for later. And that makes it tough to get a community involved in something that's going to be a long-term payout, like a grocery store.
During COVID, we couldn't be inside. So I was sitting downtown at this one eatery, and we were all outside on the sidewalk. And I'm looking at this old building, and here's this building sitting there. I thought, man, what can we use that building for? There's got to be a purpose for that. This town needs something. And I just started thinking, well, what about a farmer's market where farmers could, around here, even if you just had a small garden, but you had extra produce, bring it down there, and people, and farmers markets are great. They have them, every town has a farmers market from June 15th to October 15th on Thursday or on Saturday morning. Well, what if I'm gone Thursday, and what if Saturday morning it's raining? So we put together a little building, a little farmer's market that's open 6 days a week. And farmers or anybody can bring their produce down there and leave it there. We market it for them. We're the venue for it. We have 900 cars driven by the highway in Salmonac. So the thought was open access to more people that want to do garden. We got one woman, she just grows okra, loves to grow okra. So she brings her okra down there. And as soon as we put it on Facebook that her okra's there, people flock in and grab her okra, it's gone. And you don't have to have 100 acres to be a farmer. If you can be farming in your backyard and bringing that produce down, and I think we can support our community in that way.
Since we can't find fresh, nutrient-dense food in our grocery stores that we do shop in outside of our community, we're going to have to start growing a lot of that nutrient-dense food ourselves.
Originally, it was a vacant city block that was an illegal dump. So we sort of took it on as a challenge to try to clean it up, which was a big challenge.
We basically faced 2-story tall mounds of construction debris and other stuff we don't even want to mention. It had a nickname before it became Eden Place. It was named Dead Man's Alley because dead bodies had been discovered there over the 35 years. But anyway, we would then we would clear a patch in the junk, put up a barbecue pit, and start barbecuing hot dogs.
Food is that kind of thing that transcends, right? Backyard barbecue, and you see your neighbors and things like that. Then you're a lot more likely to get along with your neighbors if you're dealing with them, if you're seeing them. It has a very stabilizing effect for communities. And like I say, it's a lot to do with their identity as a community too.
And we would put out a flyer, free lunch if you come help clean up. And I can show you pictures of little babies trying to carry a tire and push it out of the way just so they can earn a hot dog. And so we did that for 3 years trying to clean it up. And then we basically asked the community, what do you want? And they said, well, maybe we could have a park there. I said, well, we got a park up there, full of park. They says, yeah, but we want a place, that's gonna be safe and a place that we can, learn about things, like the environment. And so the dream of Eden Place in '91 was conceived by the community. And in '92, we actually did a grand opening ceremony of a nature center in the middle of a dump.
And we got the music, entertainment, and he throwing down.
Morning is so red. At Eden Place Nature Center, we actually started a demonstration farm. We had horses, goats, ducks, chickens, geese, pigs, turkeys, and we would show the children where their food came from. And then we had a demonstration garden where we grew a lot of food at the Nature Center. But we had a lot of people asking us, can we buy their food? And we saw that there was such a demand, and there was a need also because there's no grocery store. We decided we would try to expand our growing portion, and then we found this area, another 3 acres of land that was for sale. And I don't know to this day how we were able to purchase it, but we actually got a mortgage to buy this 3 acres that came with a 13,000 square foot facility. Then we said, okay, well, we can grow food and we can have a learning center that people could come and learn, and we could train people to be farmers. And so that's the mission of Eden Place Farm, is to educate and grow more Illinois farmers.
And you don't go in like, I'm the almighty, I know everything. You go in as we're sharing information. And you always let your community know, I need to learn something from you. Just like you need to learn something from me, I need to learn something from you. And that validates them wanting to be a part of a community.
Sitting on the Farm Bureau Board of Directors, I represent District 1, which is DeKalb County, Kane County, McHenry County, and Lake County, so extreme northeast Illinois. I'm elected by the delegates from that area, from the farmers of that area. Wherever there's an issue, Farm Bureau's usually got a game plan laid out for that issue. I'm concerned about how people get their nutrition in the city. Farm Bureau should be concerned about that also. So I think there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do to educate people on how to, they're growing these backyard gardens in small plots in Chicago, other cities around the state. I think we need to be some assistance to them, some technical assistance. Maybe we can help them in certain ways, but people need to have access to food. It shouldn't be their 2 or 3 or 4 hours out of their day worried about how they're going to get their food home. I'm excited about what they're doing in there. It's catching on in there. It's something for their youth to do. It's a learning experience. It needs to build. It needs to build. I mean, they had to come up with clean soil. They're on some reclaimed lands in there that are polluted. They can't really bore down into the soil to grow crops. So they're building the soil on top of that ground. They've got a little barrier, but they work through these problems.
When COVID hit, we lost our income stream because we're open facility, so we need traffic to generate income. And because everything got shut down, we had no traffic, and we got behind on our mortgage. In 2021, we got a note saying our mortgage had been sold. And the new mortgage people sent demand for payment. They wanted everything that was in arrears, or they were going to foreclose. And they did exactly that. They foreclosed. We had some students here from Roosevelt, and they said, Mr. Howard, we want to help. And we had 3 fundraisers. And we did so well with those fundraisers. Not only did we able to get caught up in arrears, we actually paid the mortgage off on the farm. Because of all of our friends and supporters that, love Eden Place Farms, love Eden Place, it was really it's a wonderful life moment.
It was a sad time for a while because you see all your blood, sweat, and tears, all of a sudden that could be just pulled from under you over something financial. Sometimes in certain communities, you feel like you're in the trenches all the time. You feel like you're always fighting battles. And Michael used to say it was like he was always coming in putting fires out, and that's sort of what we've done. But we've been given the strength, really from God, to realize this is not a permanent fixture. This is a problem now, but we can't sit and mope about it. We can feel what everybody else would feel, the sadness of it. We can feel nobody cares, but then we get over that and we try to move on. So when people came in and said, we want to help, it's the one thing that you need just to keep you going. So the one thing we have to remember sometimes is We want to reach thousands and thousands, and that is the goal. But we always said if you can reach the head of the household, if you can change a child's look on their environment and what's going on around them, you have reached the most important thing. You have reached that person's heart where they can change their lifestyle and how they want to live. So community outreach is not for punks. You have to have a strong background, because your own people will chew you up and spit you out only because they don't understand sometimes what you're trying to do.
One of the key moments of our history coming back to Fuller Park happened in 2000. I believe it was June of 2000. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, our house was firebombed by the local gangs in retaliation to what they felt was the Howards interrupting their business on the street. But what was great about our event is my family stood at the door by my order and not go outside, and the house was burning. One of the great things about that moment that we shared as a family was God, who basically saved our house, saved our lives, and gave us an opportunity to make a choice to stay and not leave, to continue in the work that we feel, we were led to do in terms of helping others. We had choices. We both have college degrees. I have a skill set that gives me 6-figure salary any moment I want it. But I chose to stay and serve our community that we had committed ourselves to. And it's been a blessing. Since 2000, 23 years ago, we have had nothing but great moments, great opportunities to serve and show people how to have a better quality of life. That's our mission. Fishing, hunting, camping, to farming, showing folks that there is a difference in the way you grow your food. We're not scientists, we're not biologists. We can only find the information and then share it with our families and our community and hope they can have an informed decision that they must make.
In the Bible it says, take a man fishing, you feed him for the day, teach a man to fish, and you've fed him for his lifetime. And I think it's the same kind of thought. Teach him how to grow something, and you fed him for his lifetime.
The Institute for Rural Affairs was created in 1989 in partnership with the governor's office. It's designed to be a clearinghouse for information on all things rural Illinois. So academic study, but we also do a ton of outreach in different communities, and we have a master's program in community and economic development.
The Institute of Rural Affairs is to drive rural economic development, but these programs are beyond just rural communities. That means that they work in small business development and cooperative development.
I like to joke we do food co-ops, but your majority of food co-ops are in college towns, and I don't work those areas. We work food deserts, so you're talking very rural or very urban. Those are your two. I'm never in the suburbs, it seems like.
There's entire counties in Illinois that don't have grocery stores. The Cooperative Development Center provides that technical assistance for a community-driven grocery store to succeed here in Illinois.
Co-ops are businesses too, so they run very, very similar. So I started doing business planning for them. As we were going, because we're the Institute for Rural Affairs, we started getting a lot of calls and emails from small town mayors if they have an economic developer in the area saying, well, the store was owned by someone who's a baby boomer, they're looking to retire, we have no way to fill that. No one wants to come in and buy it. No small business is 100% guaranteed, but they find that those that go through an incubator program can be as much as an 80% success rate, which is way better than your average. So we provide that in a one-on-one situation where we go to the stores themselves. So we'll work with that community on a weekly basis. We'll be in the community. Right now, we've had several, including a store that just closed down south They were paying over $6,000 a month in their utility bills. And you're talking about a town of less than 1,000 people, so that you just can't do that. So one of the first practices we do is new refrigeration. Another thing that we do is shared space. So building a building right now is extremely difficult. It's hard to find a contractor because they're so backlogged and the prices have gone up so much. What we do, we go in and we try to find a building that looks like it could be rehabbed. The bones are good, but a lot of years of disuse, and those are pretty common in small towns. We put a little love into it as a leasehold improvement. We don't have to build, we can go in tomorrow and start working on it. If that building's too big, we can do other things in that to bring in revenue. So the last one we finished has one workforce development with 2 junior colleges in it, and we're looking at a high school workforce development and a meat cutter training program there. And those will all be bringing in revenue. So it's multiple streams. You have a small business, a small grocer or a co-op, they live in that community and that money's recirculated back through and they hire more people. That's really rewarding work because you see them get that, that spark of something they really want.
The Everything Local Conference is the Illinois Food, Farmers Market, and Specialty Crop Conference here in Illinois. This combined 3 previous active conferences into one to create an environment that brought everyone together from the entire food system supply chain and specialty crop industry. They can get their technical assistance, those really hard-hitting educational opportunities that they're looking for, but more importantly, they're able to connect and network with each other. So we're bringing together over 700 people from across the state working in food systems for 3 days of engagement to connect, grow, and educate.
Every year since about 13 years ago, we've made every conference down in Springfield, and we've grown a lot of our urban farmers' numbers at the conference just by basically begging them to come with us. Like, if you come to the conference, man, I'll buy you dinner. Come on. I was like, wow. And then they had the exhibitors booths and all of those vendors there. I'm like, oh man, I need this, we need that. And so I got to know every vendor. I got to talk to many farmers after their presentations. And I actually got invited to many farms to come down and see operations and see how it's done. And so I would go and I'd visit farms, and I realized that a lot of them live in food deserts. That was a paradigm shift for me. It's like, wait a minute, man, all these acres are growing, but they are growing row crops. And a lot of those crops are not for human consumption.
I grow corn and soybeans. My customer is the elevator in town, which I take corn to, but my real customer is overseas. I'll never meet my customer. I'll never know my customer. What does my customer want?
But then when they would ask me questions about, well, what are you growing? You say you're a farmer. I'm like, yeah, I'm an urban farmer and I grow specialty crops. I don't make no money at it, but I'm doing it. And then he says, aha, that's what I'm talking about. See, I can get contracts to grow, and we get into this deep conversation of finance.
But when you're here dealing with urban agriculture, you see the wife that comes in that wants to pick out eggs that she knows are cage-free. Now, I'm not saying they're the best eggs, but that's what she wants, and she's willing to pay more for them. So is that how I get more value in my agricultural product?
And I said, well, there is economy of scale and everything, where I said, well, there are niches that you can grow for in Chicago that you could probably make a lot of profit on. And he says, well, what? I said, well, you'd be surprised how many people would buy callaloo. And he was like, what's that? I said, see, you don't know, but there's a bunch of Jamaicans and Caribbean people in Chicago. And this is a plant that's kind of hard to grow in the Midwest. But if you got some high tunnels and heated tunnels, you can grow that plant and you could get premium dollars. We grow microgreens, so we can get $16 a pound for our sunflower microgreens.
It's really important for our rural communities to understand urban settings just as much as it is to get our urban communities on the farm. One of those things is doing programs like Taste of Illinois. And what that means is a farm to fork tour in the middle of December where we are seeing what agriculture looks like in a city. It's really interesting how everybody shifts and changes. We have oftentimes heard that the urban community is disconnected from where their food comes from and how they got there. But sometimes you're also disconnected from your urban communities.
Regella got me excited about it. She come in the boardroom and she's talking about these things, and I thought, yeah, I got to educate myself on this stuff, and I got to see what this urban agriculture is. And they're producing very lush vegetables. I mean, when I was up there this winter, they know what they're doing with not much to work with.
It's really funny to look at somebody like Tuttle and be on a farm tour with him in the middle of the city, and he realized that his mom grew up just down the street from the farm we're sitting on, and what that community has changed in the last 50 years, and really being able to reconnect with your history through agriculture.
Went down on the south side. We were down at 90th and Manistee. And I'm thinking, well, my mother was in this area. So I texted her and she said, well, I was born and raised at 80th and Manistee. So I was 10 blocks away from where my mom in 1939 was born, and her father worked in the steel mills there, and they had a little corner store. And they sold confectionaries and school supplies and had ice cream. And so I saw what her neighborhood, where she grew up, it was vastly different than when she was there. There was burned out buildings. There was places where there wasn't a building. There was buildings that were just charred. But then there'd be 2 or nice homes next door, and they had flowers. You could see that they were trying to keep the places up. And we're working in the backyards of this place, and we're right there. In fact, the ships that they load at Cal Harbor were right just within a couple hundred feet away from us. So we were right in an active port, and here's these people are working on this, they're building greenhouses, and they're just excited as can be about where they were. It's 20 degrees, the wind's off the lake, I was freezing, but these people were just so excited and so passionate about sharing their story about, look what we're doing here, and how they load the food in this old truck and they drive it to some churches and deliver it on Saturday mornings. But they were excited about what they had. I mean, probably as excited as I was the first year I got a 10-acre farm, and I'm farming now. But to see that the compassion in them, they're going to be there for a while. They want to do it. They're going to make it work.
And it's those moments where we're sitting in a winter farmer's market and people are selling their eggs and they're talking about reaching hundreds of thousands of people at one time, because our markets in Chicago have tens of thousands of attendees every single time that they're open. And it was a light bulb click. This is how we connect with our consumers. This is how they understand what we're doing. But also, this is how people are making a living. Agriculture can be viable no matter where you're at.
It's nice that USDA is now recognizing that urban farmers are a valuable commodity to invest in, because it brings local food to the larger populations of people. But it's starting to not feel so isolated anymore, because basically, we've got great friends like Regella and you, Scott, and everybody else, that we can now pick up the phone and say, hey, do you know anybody? Can you help us, find this? Can you help us get there? And that's happened on numerous occasions. We've also gotten phone calls from people in Springfield, people from Washington, D.C. that have heard about us through like the Illinois Farm Bureau.
I think what they're doing now is realizing the impact that our inner city farmers are having. So we've been allowed to be in the position of seeing some of those changes come about. And we're seeing people come in that says, okay, I'm understanding what their purpose is. All I want them to do is give me a seat at the table and really not only listen to what I'm trying to tell you, but help me.
It's really funny because agriculture is a very cyclic opportunity. It reaches us in so many different ways, and we have symbiotic relationships. It only works if we have every step moving in the right direction. That means that, honestly, there's a type of farming that has to be throughout the entire system. There's no one piece that exists in one way or another. So you have to have those grain farms that create the feed for our livestock, and our livestock creates fertilizer for our specialty crops. And we then have our fruits and vegetables, but we have our protein. We have grains that build flour All of these go to food waste reductions and create fertilizers. It's all a really important piece that fits together like a lock and key. And if we don't have one piece, we're not creating a food system that's sustainable.
I think we want people that want to care. And I think there's a lot of people in the city that do care about where their food comes from, and they want to see things like these urban agricultural things be successful.
We just have to give high regards and high respect to the farmers, and that we just make sure we don't let industry come in and wipe them out.
People see a sign in a field for a seed corn company and think, oh, that company owns that farm. No, they don't. That's just an advertisement. So our message has to get out, telling that we are family farms. I care about this place. I mean, my water comes out of this ground that I drink. As far as community, I want our community to know how important the land is out here. I want the community to know that farmers are doing a good job on, we worry about soil erosion, we worry about water quality, we worry about clean air, we worry about the bees with the monarchs, we worry about that stuff. I want to see my grandkids be able to come and say, hey, that edit that out. I want to see my grandkids come and, know what the farm was. You know, I've had a good life. It's been fun. Yeah, there's times it's really scary to be a farmer because of finances. There's times it's really hectic. There's times it's just, you're just tired of, breakdowns or something going on. At the end of the year, you look back, you think, by God, it wasn't a bad year. And I'm ready for it. We build up for that spring every year where, we get excited. Like you smell that dirt in the spring and almost like your blood starts to boil a little bit about you're ready to go do agriculture. You're ready to farm, you're ready to plant.
You don't stick with somebody 41 years unless you're connected by the hip. We always says the original Eden Place crew was our 5 kids. So they were the ground root that came in and worked with us.
They started before anybody even uttered the words urban agriculture. That was not a conversation that was being held. What they saw was a need in their community. They saw a place that people needed to connect. They needed a safe space for kids to thrive.
We marveled that God put us in a position this year to take a busload of families to the Springfield Fair. We didn't even dream of doing that. But the families, what we saw in them, they just were beaming that they could camp outside, that they can go to the state fair, that they can see all the animals. And it's amazing that how our lives have touched so many other lives.
So many of you urban ag farmers will tell you they went to the nature center when they were kids. They saw all those things, and that's how they led to what they're doing now. They're pioneers in what they do.
And it's not for bragging fact, and it's not that we're so great and wonderful. We're just everyday people that gotta fight every battle that everybody else is fighting. So we keep hanging in there, waiting for retirement.
What's that?
No, I don't think we'll ever retire.